Greetings! Senior citizens can experience the dismay of knowing that their mind is deteriorating. I'm not referring to Alzheimer's disease or any of the dementias that can strike an individual. I'm referring to something considered far less serious by society, almost to the point of being humorous. They're called senior moments, which is a terrible phrase. It's insulting and ageist. It would be more accurate and far better to call them memory events. Society treats them as one of those aging things you can't do anything about, and so you shouldn't be concerned about them. Well, that's only half right. You can't do anything about it, but you ought to be very concerned. Here are a few of my recent memory events. In January, just 11 months ago, I was laid off from work along with two colleagues and friends, Tommy and Adam. Recently, I was at a dinner with friends, including Tommy. We were discussing how things are going in our current jobs. It became apparent that I had forgotten Adam was part of the layoff. Now, I wasn't misremembering something that happened to 5,000 people 20 years ago and 7 jobs ago. It was only 11 months ago, and the three of us were work friends on the same team. How could I not recall Adam being laid off? We all stayed in touch through the layoff and afterward, and even still to this day. I'm challenging a charge on my American Express card from AliExpress. As part of this, Amex asked me to document the entire transaction for the 3rd time. This is annoying as hell, but that's a topic for another video. I spent 2 hours writing a 7-page letter with screenshots and dates. I formatted the dates as day, month, year. It looked odd, but I couldn't say why, and so I just shrugged it off. I confirmed the components were in order of decreasing granularity, so there was no confusion. Almost 24 hours later, it popped into my head that the date format, in fact, should have been year, month, day. Let me put this blunder in perspective. I've been learning about, studying, or working in the computer industry since 1975. Year, month, day is everywhere in computer software and hardware. I literally couldn't count the number of times I've used it. Yet, not only did I do it wrong, I did it wrong 12 times in an important document that I reviewed about 5 times before sending it off. I have a side table in my movie room. One of its legs broke off at the foot. Don't ask how, it was mostly due to cheap construction. I went to fix it. I looked at the part that snapped off and misunderstood what it connected to, even though I can tell you now that it was obvious what it connected to, or it should have been. As a result, I pushed a foot retaining clip far down into the leg tube, making it unusable. So what should have been a 10-minute superglue fix became a 45-minute repair extravaganza because my blunder made it worse. In effect, I did additional damage to the table. I was thinking about the movie The Martian, and I couldn't remember the lead actor's name. I thought it was George something, which is curious since Matt Damon and George Clooney have co-starred in multiple films. So my brain grasped some of Matt Damon's attributes, but not his name. It took me about an hour to remember it. I've also had this happen in software engineering. I know a concept or activity, maybe thoroughly, and I know the when, where, and why of it. I know the science or logic of it. I'm very familiar with it. But at that moment, I just can't recall its name. My father had a problem with recalling proper nouns. When talking to one of his children, he'd sometimes cycle through all of his kids' names until he got to the correct one. These brain events are of 2 types. In type 1 events, I should know something but do not. And I know that I should know it, and that the condition of not knowing it is a system error. In a type 2 event, my brain looks up some information, retrieves garbage, and proceeds to use it, and I don't know that anything is wrong. The frequency of these events matters as much as their severity. If something happens slightly more than it did when you were 30, you'll be a lot less concerned than if it happens 300 times more often than when you were 30. Type 1 events started around when I turned 50. Type 2 events started around when I turned 62. I found some techniques useful to manage these events. First off, lowering the number of tasks I'm trying to do simultaneously helps. So does reducing the number of ways I allow myself to be interrupted. iPhone notifications, I'm looking at you. Basically, if I spend less energy grinding my gears about other things other than my primary task, I can be more focused on my primary task. In effect, I can dedicate more processing power to it. Your CPU is overloaded, so let's lower the CPU load average, and that ought to help. For type 1 events, it helps to stop trying to recall the missing information. I back off entirely. I'll think about something else for a few minutes, and sometimes, but not always, the forgotten name will just pop into my mind. For type 2 events, sometimes I'll have a bit of doubt on the order of, that looks odd, but, well, yep, I guess it's what it ought to be. When I have those, instead of quickly dismissing them because they're in the way of my objective, I try to remember to stop and think. I try to remember to pause the activity for a couple of minutes. But that's very hit or miss. In the examples I gave you, I sensed it when writing the letter to American Express, but was oblivious in the other two examples. I didn't know that I was using bad information. Type 1 events are frustrating but manageable. Type 2 events are much more serious. It's not a big leap to go from misremembering a date-time format to thinking that it's okay to make a left turn on a red light. They mean that my brain is degrading, and your brain is degrading too if you're having these memory events. This is scary stuff. It's happening to who I am. If you believe in souls and an afterlife, you can take some comfort in the fact that the real you isn't affected. After you die and you presumably, but not guaranteed, go to heaven, you won't have these or any other ailments for all time. When you're there, you're in some kind of perfect form. But here's the rub. I'm an atheist. I believe all we are is what we have in the physical realm. When we die, that's it. What some people call a soul or a spirit is just a manifestation of our physical brain. For example, when our brain is damaged from disease or injury, our personality and memories are affected. The causality between physical brain and individual is clear and obvious. These events mean my brain is degrading. My mind is going. To whatever extent there's a John at the nucleus of my self-awareness, he's disappearing. There's nothing I can do about this but accept it. Just as I can't do anything about the fact that someday I'll die and I will completely end. And as these events continue, I'll be a witness to my mind's decay. And that's why these events that society treats so lightly are very serious. Because John will know that John is slipping away and can't do anything about it. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this if you're going through this, and what tricks, what techniques you use to work around them and how you feel about them. Anyway, that sobering thought is all I've got for today. Till next time, take care.